Leah Wilson. Good to see you. Bella Haynes. Hallelujah. Good evening once again, Cupcake 701. Good to see you, baby sis. Yes, we're gonna spend some time in a very interesting subject tonight. This Jesus fella has the answers, he says in my redneck voice. That's right. You got a reason to praise him. Now to Nicole, hello. Some people got a reason. Hey, some people got a reason to praise him. Sister Bella, I've never heard it before in my life. I didn't do it. Wasn't me. This is from Twinkie Clark's album, produced by Larry Clark. That's the album. No, certainly you didn't. Now, Sister Bella, sometimes, several times, with these crooked fingers here, I've made a mistake and hit somebody's name, and then I think I'm fixing it, and it, you know, it'll say something, but I can't tell what's going on or what it says. So I don't know if that happened, but no, I wasn't consciously aware of anything like that. And you're good. Everything is good. Everything is good. And I'm glad that everything is overstood. And we're all here. We're back once again. So let's jump right in. And we're going to start reading from Bryce Taylor's Thanks for the Memories. Sister Julie, good to see you in the place to be. Hi. And yes, please hit that thumbs up if you can. I'm going to try to at least give you a quality hour here. Okay? Thanks for the memories. Thank you so much, Kobe. I appreciate you. Thanks for the memories. The truth has set me free. The memoirs of Bob Hope's and Henry Kissinger's mind-controlled slave, used as a presidential sex toy and personal mind file computer. It's by Bryce Taylor. I love y'all. Excuse me. Friday Child, peace and blessings to you. It says, this book is dedicated to my children, Kevin, Kelly, Danny, and my baby son taken from my arms at birth. My immense love for my children gave me the strength, courage, and motivation to ask God to show me how to do the impossible, to be released from the clutches of the most powerful men in the world in order to heal from the mind control they put me under. Through the healing and recovery of my mind, I realized my children were also under mind control. and had endured severe abuse and endless torture. Please join with me in prayers for their total and complete release and healing, and for the release and healing of countless other victims around the globe whose souls cry out daily for freedom and release from bondage. The truth will set us free. In God I trust. Susan Ford, Bryce Taylor. And she sent, like, this is done. It's strange. You forget how organically an operation like hers would have to be done. She signed the receipt. So they're still fighting the good fight. So let us pray. Let's pray for them. And so many strange things happen with mind control. I felt like they went back after Cathy O'Brien via Mark Phillips. I just had that feeling. And so I pray that folks who are able to truly get away can stay free. And I know that if they stay under the shadow of the protection of our Father's wings, they will be free. So perhaps one sister got fully under the protection of Christ, and she's okay and still able to work and tell her story today. And then perhaps with the other sister, we have a case where they kind of got swallowed up with New Age, it seems to me. The last things I found. And they were the last things I heard and found. I wasn't sure where they stood with Christ. So, as you can imagine, I'm talking about Cathy and Bryce. Okay. So, I'm going to skip the acknowledgments and let's jump right into it. And I'm going to skip the disclaimer. A lot of times when you're reading mind control books, I remember seeing it in Fritz Springmeier's book. They'll give you somewhat of a disclaimer in the beginning and say, if you're suffering from mind control, or if you may have been a victim, perhaps some of the material in here may serve as triggers. It may trigger certain things in you. So please be sure and consult your doctors or whatever before you read this book. Something along that line. Yeah, if you suffer from multiple personality disorder or DID. And of course, to tell you that the author, editor, or publisher can in no way be held liable for the use or misuse of the information in this book. Now, all right, so now let's jump to it. Forward. Do we want to deal with the forward or move forward? Historical overview. That's where I think we should start. All right, historical overview. SRA, Deborah Swart. SRA means satanic ritual abuse. '80s baby, welcome. Okay. Okay. All right. You're welcome. Okay, so yeah, it makes sense. Let's start with the historical overview. Mind control in the modern context. Mind control is a rather vague and nebulous term used to label methods of extreme coercion that result in an individual's involuntary robotic compliance. In order for the reader to fully understand the account presented in this book, it is essential to gain some background knowledge about the history of mind control. There was a special report or article that appeared in the U.S. News and World Report, January 24, 1994, entitled The Cold War Experiments, which provides one with an introductory and conventionally accepted perspective on the subject of mind control. The article begins stating the widely held view that U.S. government scientists, spurred on by reports that American prisoners of war were being brainwashed in North Korea, were proposing an urgent, top-secret research program on behavior modification. Drugs, hypnosis, electroshock, lobotomy, all were to be studied as part of a vast U.S. effort to close the mind control gap. At the time this article appeared, congressional inquiries were being held to examine new disclosures about government experiments that had intentionally exposed American citizens to radiation. Wow. The article continues, but the radiation experiments are only one facet of a vast Cold War research program that used thousands of Americans as guinea pigs. And from the end of World War II well into the 1970s, the Atomic Energy Commission, the Defense Department, the military services, the CIA, and other agencies used prisoners, drug addicts, mental patients, college students, soldiers, even bar patrons, in a vast range of government-run experiments to test the effects of everything from radiation, LSD and nerve gas, to intense electric shocks and prolonged sensory deprivation. Note the portrayal of this activity as a vast government effort. The article also illustrates the recent congressional concern. It's not just radiation we're talking about, says Democratic Senator John Glenn of Ohio, mind-controlled astronaut. But they made believe went to outer space. A former Marine and astronaut who was holding hearings on the subject this week, the week, of course, of the time of this writing. Any place government experimenting caused a problem. We should make every effort to notify the people and follow up. We ought to set up some sort of review and compensation for people who were really hurt. Years later, on January 22nd, 1997, Senator Glenn introduced before Congress the Human Research Subject Protections Act of 1997. January 22nd, 22 is a cusp, and it's 11 twice. It's double twins, okay? Anyhow, it was referred to the Senate Committee on Labor and Human Resources, chaired by Senator Arlen Specter. Specter, another word for a ghost or phantom, is a specter. Author of the Warren Commission's single bullet theory, and it never made it out. So what it's saying is, John Glenn introduced before Congress the Human Research Subject Protections Act of 1997, an act supposedly written to protect people who had been used in government experiments and to compensate them if they were really hurt. So he tried to bring it to Congress. Well, he did introduce it before Congress. It was referred to the Senate Committee on Labor and Human Resources, and it never made it out. It didn't get past that committee, which was chaired by Senator Arlen Specter. All right. With the many harebrained pieces of legislation that make it to the Senate floor, you would think that one which attempts to safeguard human subjects of experimentation would be a no-brainer. But apparently, it is not with this Congress. Parallel with this activity, President Clinton published an administrative order known as Memorandum of March 27, 1997, entitled Strengthened Protections for Human Subjects of Classified Research, see the appendix, which attempted to implement the recommendations of the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments, which he established in January 1994. But to date, these well-intended efforts have had little or no impact. So legislation that has been brought out to try to help victims of experimentation has come to naught. Last year, April 15, 1998, Harlan Gerard, on behalf of the International Committee for the Convention Against Offensive Microwave Weapons, the existence of these committees is confirmation of the existence of these forms of weaponry and warfare. It says, so on behalf of the International Committee for the Convention Against Offensive Microwave Weapons, brought suit against the federal government for its non-compliance in carrying out President Clinton's administrative order. This case is still in the process of working its way through the federal courts. The U.S. News and World Report article concludes with the following paragraph. Another former CIA official, Sidney Gottlieb, who directed the MKULTRA behavior control program almost from its inception, refused to discuss his work when U.S. News reporter visited him last week at his home. He said the CIA was only trying to encourage basic work in behavior science, but he added that after his retirement in 1973, he went back to school, practiced for 19 years as a speech pathologist, and now works with AIDS and cancer patients at a hospice. He said he has devoted the years since he left the CIA trying to get on the side of the angels instead of the devils. He said he has devoted the years since he left the CIA to trying to get on the side of the angels instead of the devils. Gottlieb's praiseworthy activities since 1973 speak to the seriousness of what he had participated in prior to that date under Project MKUltra. He was one individual who at least tried to do something to save his soul, quote unquote, which is more than one can say for the host of others who were similarly involved. Gottlieb passed away early in 1999, just in time to miss all the, quote, fireworks. The following article, Project Monarch, Nazi Mind Control, by Ron Patton, provides an excellent historical overview on mind control in its many different aspects, and is reprinted here almost in its entirety. The article appeared in the trend-setting alternative press magazine called Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, in the fall 1996 issue. This magazine, one of several iconoclasts, has published a number of such informative articles on related subjects and, to date, appears to be the leading source for news and information about mind control. Note, the actual name of a classified project known to many as Monarch is yet to be officially confirmed. Therefore, the reader is advised to substitute the phrase trauma-based mind control for the author's usage of the code name Monarch. So in other words, throughout the book, Bryce will be using the term Monarch, but they're telling you here in this portion of the foreword that Monarch had not yet been confirmed as the official name, and so the PC term, the term that you can use without any questioning, is trauma-based mind control. Okay, whatever the program was called, the program was about trauma-based mind control. So, just switching the noun or the single proper noun for a description of what it is. Project Monarch, Nazi Mind Control by Ron Patton. Amidst the subtle cerebral circumvention of the gullible populace, through a multitude of manipulated mediums, lies one of the most diabolical atrocities perpetuated, lies one of the most diabolical atrocities perpetrated upon a segment of the human race, a form of systematic mind control which has permeated every aspect of society for almost 50 years. To objectively ascertain the following, one may need to re-examine preconceived ideologies relating to the dualistic nature of mankind. Resolving the philosophical question of whether we are inherently good or inherently evil is tantamount in shaping our perception of reality, specifically the spiritual variable within the equation of life. This exposition is substantiated by declassified U.S. government documents, individuals formerly connected to the U.S. intelligence communities, historical researchers knowledgeable in mind control, publications from mental health practitioners, and interviews taken from survivors unwittingly subjected to a highly complex form of trauma-based mind control, known as Monarch programming. Let's see. Is everybody good in here? Okay. All right. Okay, good. Okay, good. All right. All right. Let's continue. Peace and blessings to you, Carpe. Seize the day. Peace and blessings to you. And I thank folks who came in and hit the thumbs up. Let's continue. All right, next. Next page says a word of caution for survivors of intensely systematic mind control and or some form of ritualized abuse. There are numerous triggers in this article. It is therefore recommended not to read it unless appropriate support systems are in place or if you have a thoroughly reintegrated personality. Sounds like fear-mongering to me. Let's go. All right. Yep. I love you, brother. Okay. A brief history of control. The mystery religions of ancient Egypt, Greece, India, and Babylon helped lay the foundation for occultism, meaning hidden knowledge. One of the earliest writings giving reference to occultism is the Egyptian Book of the Dead, a compilation of rituals explicitly describing methods of torture and intimidation to create trauma, the use of potions, drugs, and the casting of spells, hypnotism, ultimately resulting in the total enslavement of the initiate. These have been the main ingredients for a part of occultism known as Satanism throughout the ages. During the 13th century, the Roman Catholic Church increased and solidified its dominion throughout Europe with the infamous Inquisition. Satanism survived this period of persecution, deeply entrenching itself under the veil of various esoteric groups. In 1776, a Bavarian Jesuit by the name of Adam Weishaupt was commissioned by the House of Rothschild to centralize the power base of the mystery religions into what is commonly known as the Illuminati, meaning enlightened ones. This was an amalgamation of powerful occultic bloodlines, elite secret societies, and influential masonic fraternities, with the desire to construct the framework for a new world order. The outward goal of this utopia was to bring forth universal happiness to the human race. However, their underlying intention was to gradually increase control over the masses, thus becoming masters of the planet. Next chapter. The Anglo Alliance. By the 19th century, Great Britain and Germany were recognized as the primary geographic areas of Illuminati control. It then should be of little surprise to know the first work in behavioral science research was established in England in 1882, while much of the early medical and psychiatric techniques involved in mind control were pioneered at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute in Germany. The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations was set up in London in 1921 to study the quote-unquote breaking point of humans. Kurt Lewin, a German psychologist, became the director of the Tavistock Institute in 1932, about the same time Nazi Germany was increasing its research into neuropsychology, parapsychology, and multi-generational occultism. All, of course, guided by the Thule Society. These were not ideas that Hitler and the SS came up with by their own inspiration even, there was a secret society tied in with Adolf Hitler all along that was giving him the occult blueprint that he followed and set up the SS using. Let's continue. Okay. Interestingly, a progressive exchange of scientific ideas was taking place between England and Germany, right? Most notably in the field of eugenics, the movement devoted to improving, quote unquote, the human species through the control of hereditary factors in mating. Controlling who's mating with who. The nefariously enigmatic union between the two countries was bonded, partly through the Order of the Golden Dawn, a secret society which consisted of many high-ranking officials in the Nazi Party and British aristocracy. Top SS Nazi officer Heinrich Himmler was in charge of a scientific project called Lebensborn, which The Boys from Brazil is based off of, which included selective breeding and adoption of children, a peculiarly large number of twins among them. The purpose of the program was to create a super race. Yes, Aryans who would have total allegiance to the cause of the Third Reich, aka New World Order. Much of the preliminary experimentation concerning genetic engineering and behavior modification was conducted by Dr. Joseph Mengele at Auschwitz. Dr. Mengele was even caricatured in the G.I. Joe cartoon that was big in the 80s. When I was growing up, there was a doll named Dr. Mindbender. And he was instrumental in creating the clone emperor, whose DNA included DNA from Hitler. I learned this watching the cartoon, G.I. Joe. So they were getting us ready for this back then. Okay. Much of the preliminary experimentation concerning genetic engineering and behavior modification was conducted by Dr. Joseph Mengele at Auschwitz, where he coldly analyzed the effects of trauma bonding, making people bond because of trauma, eye coloring, taking them apart, putting them back together, trying to see how it worked, and twinning upon his victims. Let's read. Wait a minute. Everybody in here cool? Anybody need to go? Everything all right? Somebody let me know. Okay, cool. Thank you, Chickpea. All right, because I'm looking down, so I can't see. All right, but I'm trying to look every couple seconds. Okay. All right, so here we go. I got to look down to read. Okay. And twinning upon his victims. All right, cool. Thank you. All right, y'all. Thanks. All right, let's continue. Besides the insidious surgical experimentation performed at the concentration camp, some of the children were subjected to massive amounts of electroshock. Sadly, many of them did not survive the brutality. Concurrently, brainwashing was carried out on inmates at Dachau, who were placed under hypnosis and given the hallucinogenic drug mescaline. During the war, parallel behavioral research was led by Dr. George Estabrooks of Colgate University. So he was doing it too. His involvement with the Army, CID, FBI, and other agencies remains shrouded in secrecy. However, Estabrooks would occasionally slip, quote unquote, and discuss his work involving the creation of hypno-programmed couriers and hypnotically induced split personalities. George Estabrooks of Colgate University was working on this, as well as Joseph Mengele and others that were brought in through Project Paperclip. You should look it up if somebody in there don't want to tell you. After WW2, after World War II, the U.S. Department of Defense secretly imported many of the top German Nazi and Italian fascist scientists and spies into the United States via South America and the Vatican. That's why so many said Hitler and other Nazis were hiding out in South America. The code name for this operation was Project Paperclip, where we brought the Nazi scientists who were the most progressive at being evil and diabolical. They brought them over here. And that's how Werner von Braun and Jack Parsons and all of them end up coming up with the jet propulsion lab and our first rockets and all of that, and the space program all came from mind control. So when you wonder how some folks are tied the space program to mind control, or folks will say arbitrarily astronauts are mind controlled, that's where they get it from. You got the same scientists working on both projects at the same time, both scientists from Germany working on our rockets and working on the mind control program at the same time. Okay. Okay, all right, let's go. All right, now, after World War II, the U.S. Department of Defense secretly imported many of the top German Nazi and Italian fascist scientists and spies into the United States by way of South America and the Vatican. The code name for this operation, if you wait for it, it's going to come. The code name for this operation was Project Paperclip. Excellent. Excellent catch, though. One of the most prominent finds for the U.S. was German General Reinhard Gehlen, Hitler's chief of intelligence against Russia. Upon arriving in Washington, D.C. in 1945, Gehlen met extensively with President Truman. General William Wild Bill Donovan, director of the Office of Strategic Services, OSS, and Allen Dulles, who would later become the stalwart head of the CIA. The objective of their brainstorming sessions was to reorganize the nominal American intelligence operation, transforming it into a highly efficient covert organization. The culmination of their efforts produced the Central Intelligence Group in 1946, renamed the Central Intelligence Agency in 1947. Interesting to see how things are born. Richard Gehlen also had profound influence in helping to create the National Security Council. And I know some of us know this already. Again, this is to bring everyone up to speed. Some folks knew and forgot. Some folks never knew. All right. Right, okay. Okay, from which the National Security Act of 1947 was derived. This particular piece of legislation was implemented to protect an unconscionable number of illegal government activities, including clandestine mind control programs. Evolution of Project MKUltra, with the CIA and National Security Council firmly established. The first in a series of covert brainwashing programs was initiated by the Navy in the fall of 1947. Project Chatter, one who chats in chat rooms. Excuse me. The chatter over the airwaves is saying that we believe that there may be a terrorist attack from Saudi Arabia. Project Chatter was developed in response to the Soviets' successes through the use of quote-unquote truth drugs. This rationale, however, was simply a cover story if the program were to be exposed. The research focused on the identification and testing of such drugs for use in interrogations and in the recruitment of agents. The project was officially terminated in 1953. The CIA decided to expand their efforts in the area of behavior modification with the advent of Project Bluebird, approved by Director Allen Dulles in 1950. Its objectives were to discover a means of conditioning personnel to prevent unauthorized extraction of information. Its objectives were to discover a means of conditioning the personnel to prevent unauthorized extraction of information from them by known means. So we had to figure out a way to brainwash our personnel to keep others from getting information out of them. What can we do? How can we make sure that if they're captured, the information, the classified and sensitive information that they have access to, cannot be easily extracted by our enemy? So now, here it goes. The project was officially terminated in 1953. The CIA decided, so Project Bluebird, its objectives were to discover a means of conditioning personnel to prevent unauthorized extraction of information from them by known means. Second, to investigate the possibility of control of an individual. Let's investigate the possibility of control of an individual by application of special interrogation techniques. And number 3, investigate memory enhancement. And number 4, establish defensive means for preventing hostile control of agency personnel. So can we program them with something that will, that can turn on if someone else gets control of them? Suicide programming, right? Okay, let's read. In August 1951, Project Bluebird was renamed Project Artichoke, which evaluated offensive Project Bluebird was renamed Project Artichoke, which evaluated offensive uses of interrogation techniques, including hypnosis and drugs. So they will act like they're studying something to see how does this negatively affect something, so we can make sure that we know how to really negatively affect something. Okay, they'll play it off as if, we're studying this. We're studying this to make sure that everything stays above board. When in reality, they're studying it to find out how it has negatively affected people and how they can purposely use that negative effect to their advantage. Ain't that low down? Okay. Yeah. Project Artichoke evaluated offensive uses of interrogation techniques, including hypnosis and drugs. Okay, so that's when you're on offense. So ways to use hypnosis and drugs as weapons. The program ceased in 1956, so we're told. 3 years prior to the halt of Project Artichoke, Project MKULTRA came into existence on April 13th, 1953, along the lines proposed by Richard Helms, Deputy Director of Central Intelligence. CDCI, with the rationale, with the excuse, or with the reason being, establishing a special funding mechanism of extreme sensitivity. Means we can't tell nobody how we're going to get money using this. The hypothetical etymology of MK may possibly stand for the German spelling for mind control. The obvious post-war translation of the German word control, Kontrolle, into English is Control. A host of German doctors procured from the Nazi talent pool were an invaluable asset toward the development of MKUltra. The correlation between the concentration camp experiments and the numerous sub-projects of MKUltra are clearly evident. The various avenues used to control human behavior under MKUltra included radiation, electroshock, psychology, psychiatry, sociology, anthropology, graphology, harassment, substances, paramilitary devices and materials, LSD being the most widely dispensed quote-unquote material. A special procedure designated MK Delta was established to govern the use of MKUltra abroad. So MKUltra was really something special that the government cooked up for the citizens here. So when they went abroad with it, they gave it the endearing term of MK Delta. Isn't that nice? Because they didn't want to confuse it with the original, the one that's American made and German inspired. Let's see. MKUltra / MK Delta materials were used for harassment, discrediting, or disabling purposes. Of the 149 sub-projects under the umbrella of MKUltra having been identified, Project Monarch officially began by the U.S. Army in the early 1960s, although unofficially implemented much earlier. It appears to be the most prominent and is still classified as top secret for national security reasons. Monarch may have culminated from sleeper assassins, i.e. Manchurian candidates, who could be activated upon receiving a key word or phrase while in a post-hypnotic trance. Operation Often, OFTEN. Operation Often, a study which attempted to harness the power of occultic forces, was possibly one of several cover programs to hide the insidious reality of Project Monarch. Operation Often, a study which attempted to harness the power of occultic forces. I told you, the powers that be haven't changed from what you saw happen in Indiana Jones and the Temple of the Doom. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom depicts Hitler's obsession for the occult. But he's not alone. World leaders believe in the occult, and it's not so much a hidden mystery in their eyes. They know there's a dark side and a light side. And it's possible we can work with the dark side against the lights, against God. Yes. Yes. So we have a godless government. They're religious. And you know, they have a God per se. They have a little g God per se. But I mean, they're demonic to the core. They have demonic programs. This is a demonic government program. Often. All right, let's continue. Operation Spellbinder. Okay. Michael Aquino. So we know that these two things intertwine. The government offices are intertwined with the Satanic Church. All right. Definition and description. Okay. All right. That's right. The Temple of Dead Set. That's right. They dead set on following him to hell. Everybody that read it is down with it as well. Definition and description. The name monarch is not necessarily defined within the context of royal nobility. That's right, the Temple of Set, Michael Aquino. But rather refers to the monarch butterfly. When a person is undergoing trauma induced by electroshock, a feeling of lightheadedness is evidenced as if one is floating or fluttering like a butterfly. I've never been a butterfly before, so I still have a problem believing that that's what the... How do you know how... It's just, again, that's rhetorical. Okay, I get it. Trust me, I've read all the reasons why they say they use the term monarch. There are reasons connected to the other meaning of monarch too. The king and the bloodline. You being a part of a royal bloodline. But let's stick to this. When a person... Okay. All right, there's also a symbolic representation. Right, this is the more important part of the butterfly. There is also a symbolic representation pertaining to the transformation or metamorphosis of this beautiful insect from a caterpillar to a cocoon, dormancy, inactivity, to a butterfly, a new creation, which will return to its point of origin. That also has to do with their build and destroy philosophy, with their belief that, like the phoenix that will rise out of the ashes, all of that. Such is the migratory pattern that makes this species unique. Occult symbolism may give additional insight into the true meaning. Psyche is the word for both soul and butterfly, coming from the belief that human souls become butterflies while searching for a new reincarnation. Some ancient mystical groups, such as the Gnostics, saw the butterfly as a symbol of corrupt flesh. The angel of death, remember Mengele, in Gnostic artworks was portrayed crushing the butterfly. A marionette is a puppet that is attached to strings and is controlled by the puppet master. Hence, monarch programming is also referred to as the marionette syndrome. Imperial conditioning is another term used, while some mental health therapists know it as conditioned stimulus response sequences. Many names. The names change, but the game's the same. Help these people. Project Monarch, so many people don't know what they're dealing with. Let's continue. Project Monarch could be best described as a form of trauma-structured dissociation and occultic integration. Trauma-structured dissociation and occultic integration in order to compartmentalize the mind into multiple personalities within a systematic framework. During the process, a satanic ritual, usually including Kabbalistic mysticism, is performed with the purpose of attaching a particular demon or group of demons to the corresponding alter personalities. Of course, most people would view this as simply a means to enhance trauma within the victim, negating irrational belief that demonic possession actually occurs. So what they're saying is most people, even some of the people who went through the trauma, I've read and had a lot of testimonies, when folks experience the satanic ritual portion of the trauma, think Rosemary's Baby, the original, okay? When folks experience that trauma, oftentimes they brush that part off. Believe it or not, the satanic ritual part of it, when they remember it, they'll brush it off, because if you fear the devil, you can get to fearing God. People that don't believe in the devil have a hard time believing in God. And so therefore they have the memory of this satanic abuse, or excuse me, they have the memory of this ritual that was tied in with this mind control, but they think of it as nonsense. I know that's a bunch of poppycock. That's some hocus pocus, you know. So they throw out the baby with the bathwater. Oh, the devil is not real. This is something that they do when they're trying to play a trick with your mind. People don't really believe in that. Nobody really goes around in robes and sacrifices babies. So I know they only did this as a part of traumatizing my mind, because it's something that people have been programmed to be afraid of from watching horror movies and things of that. Right? See, that's how they go through it. That's how their wheels get to turning in the wrong direction. Okay. Let's continue. So there will be a ritual tied to maybe something technological implanted in you, tied to the NLP programming. So they try to make a threefold cord that is not easy to break. Let's continue. Alters and triggers. Another way of examining this convoluted victimization of body and soul is by looking at it as a complex computer program. A file or alter is created through trauma, repetition, and reinforcement. A file or alter is created through trauma, repetition, and reinforcement. In order to activate or trigger the file or alter, a specific access code or password called a cue or a command is required. The victim survivor is called a slave by the programmer handler, who in turn is perceived as master or God. They called Berry Gordy master. About 75% are female, since they possess a higher tolerance for pain and tend to dissociate easier than males. Subjects are used mainly for covert operations, prostitution and pornography. Involvement in the entertainment industry is notable. Good night, 80s baby. Peace. Peace and love to you. Involvement in the entertainment industry is notable. A former military officer connected to the DIA told this writer, listen, in the big picture, these people, Monarch victims, are in all walks of life, from the bum on the street to the white-collar guy. In corroboration, a retired CIA agent vaguely discussed the use of such personnel to be used as quote-unquote plants or chameleons for the purpose of infiltrating a designated group, gathering information, and or injecting an ulterior agenda. There are an inordinate amount of alters in the victim survivor, with numerous backup programs, mirrors, and shadows. A division of light side, good, and dark side, bad alters are interwoven in the mind and rotate on an axis. One of the main internal structures, of which there are many within the system, is shaped like a double helix consisting of 7 levels. Each system has an internal programmer who oversees the gatekeepers, quote-unquote, the demons, who grant or deny entry into the different rooms. A few of the internal images predominantly seen by victims, survivors, are trees, Templin, the Kabbalistic tree of life, with adjoining root systems, infinity loops, ancient symbols and letters, spider webs, mirrors or glass shattering, masks, castles, mazes, demons, monsters, aliens, seashells, butterflies, snakes, ribbons, bowls, flowers, hourglasses, clocks, robots, chain of command diagrams and or schematics of computer circuitry boards. So those are common internal images that victims/survivors have seen. So those were probably icons used in programming. Bloodlines and twinning. I mean, that's what they were. A majority of the victims' survivors come from multi-generational satanic families, quote in parentheses, bloodlines, and are ostensibly programmed to fulfill their destiny as the chosen ones or chosen generations, a term coined by Mengele at Auschwitz. Some are adopted out to families of similar origin. Others used in this neurological nightmare are deemed as the expendable ones, quote unquote, non-bloodliners, usually coming from orphanages, foster care homes, or incestuous families with a long history of pedophilia. There also appears to be a pattern of family members affiliated with government or military intelligence agencies. Many of the abused come from families who use Catholicism, Mormonism, I can tell you, Rosicrucianism, or charismatic Christianity as a front for their abominable activities, though members of other religious groups are also involved. Victims/survivors generally respond more readily to a rigid, religious, dogmatic, legalistic, hierarchical structure because it parallels their base programming. So what they're saying is that the base programming done in mind control can be similar to the mind control that pimps and Pastor Pochop preachers exercise over their congregations. Okay? All right. Right. Many of the abused come from families who use Catholicism, Mormonism, or charismatic Christianity as a front for their abominable activities, though members of other religious groups are also involved. Victims, survivors generally respond more readily to a rigid religious hierarchical structure because it parallels their base programming. So they like the structure of a boss, someone designating what they should do for them or giving them orders. Okay? Authority usually goes unchallenged because they're very suggestible, as their will has been usurped through subjective and command-oriented conditioning. Physical identification characteristics on victim survivors often include multiple electrical prod scars and or resultant moles on their skin. A few may have had various parts of their bodies mutilated by knives, branding irons, or needles. I started to say tattoos, but here, like I said, if you wait for it, here it comes, okay? Butterfly or occult tattoos are also common. Generally, bloodliners are less likely to have the subsequent markings as their skin is to remain pure and unblemished. So if you're a bloodliner, they probably won't want you to be tatted up. They want to keep you pure for Lucifer. The ultimate purpose of the sophisticated manipulation of these individuals may sound unrealistic, depending upon our interpretive understanding of the physical and spiritual realms. The deepest and darkest altars within bloodliners are purported to be dormant until the Antichrist is revealed. These New World Order altars supposedly contain callback orders and instructions to train and or initiate a large influx of people, possibly clones or quote-unquote soulless ones, thereby stimulating social control programs into the new millennium. So they will use them to help to condition the masses or the public for what is to come in the new millennium. The ultimate purpose of the sophisticated manipulation of these individuals may sound unrealistic, depending upon our interpretive understanding of the physical and spiritual realms. The deepest and darkest altars within bloodliners are purported to be dormant until the Antichrist is revealed. These New World Order altars supposedly contain callback orders and instructions to train and or initiate a large influx of people, possibly clones or soulless ones, thereby stimulating social control programs into the new millennium. Non-biological twinning. Non-biological twinning is yet another bizarre feature observed within Monarch programming. For instance, two young, non-related children would be ceremoniously initiated in a magical soul-binding ritual, so they might be inseparably paired for eternity, possibly another Mengele connection. They essentially share two halves of the programmed information, making them interdependent upon one another. Wow. Paranormal phenomena such as astral projection, telepathy, ESP, etc. appear to be more pronounced between those who have undergone this process. So you have many members of the elite who are purposely undergoing these processes in order to increase in what they feel are the godlike powers. Telepathy, astral projection, ESP, etc. Let's continue. And I thank all of y'all who are listening in. And yes, this is Thanks for the Memories by Bryce Taylor. Transformation of America by Cathy O'Brien is on the way. We have the Franklin cover-up as well. And if you have not hit the thumbs up, please hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, and hit that bell. Let's continue. All right. Levels of Monarch programming. Alpha, regarded as general or regular programming within the base control personality, characterized by extremely pronounced memory retention. Alpha they relate astrology to this too. Remember, it's occult technology, it's occult psychology. So Alpha having to do with the first male, or Aries, and Aries ruling the head. They love to take candidates whom they would call an Aries. Marvin Gaye, I believe they had him in the program, and he was a willing participant, at least to a certain degree. I believe he thought he was going to learn something about mind control or something spiritual, supernatural, whatever. And they showed him about the mind control going on with the pimps and the girls. And he was certainly involved. He had a girl, a young woman from one of these communities where they raise up young women to be prostitutes for use in these rituals and things. He pursued the woman, though he was married. He got jammed up by it, and we all know how he was buried. Now let's continue. So now, you see how all of this ties together? There's a method to my madness. And please, to you 12 non-likers, please hit that thumbs up with joy and gladness. Let's look. So the memory retention, strong in alpha programming, along with substantially increased physical strength and visual acuity. Usually this will be the murder programming too. Excuse me. They may marry the alpha programming to the Delta Force murder programming. Let's see. Because of the attributes of the alpha male, physical strength, visual acuity. Overstand? Okay. Alpha programming is accomplished through deliberately subdividing the victim's personality, which in essence causes a left brain, right brain division, allowing for a programmed union of left and right through neuron pathway stimulation. Beta slaves, or beta programming. Beta, referred to as sexual programming. This programming eliminates all learned moral convictions and stimulates the primitive sexual instincts devoid of inhibitions. Cat alters may come out at this level. Okay. Right. Right on. Carpe diem. Thank you. Okay, ready? All right. Me either, Jonathan G. I'm telling you, I'm sure there's some people that's not supposed to be here. Some Brotherhood members checking us out. Okay. Delta. Here it is. This is known as killer programming. Originally developed for training special agents or elite soldiers, i.e., Delta Force, 1st Earth Battalion, Mossad, etc., in covert operations. Optimal adrenal output and controlled aggression is evident. Subjects are devoid of fear, very systematic in carrying out their assignment. Self-destruct or suicide instructions are layered in at this level. Now for Theta. Let's see. Is everything cool? Okay. Everything cool in here? Okay. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Arena. All right. Theta. Excuse me. Excuse me 1 second. Okay. Theta programming. Very interesting. 1 second. Considered to be psychic programming. The Thetas are the ones who are gifted the indigo children, right? Considered to be psychic programming. Bloodliners, those coming from multi-generational satanic families, were determined to exhibit a greater propensity for having telepathic abilities than did non-bloodliners. They want to prove because they're bloodliners, they have the powers of Lucifer, their father. It says, due to its evident limitations, however, various forms of electronic mind control systems were developed and introduced, namely biomedical human telemetry devices, brain implants, directed energy lasers using microwaves and or electromagnetics. It is reported these are used in conjunction with highly advanced computers and sophisticated satellite tracking systems. Omega Monarch programming. A self-destruct, Omega meaning the end, a self-destruct form of programming also known as code green. The corresponding behaviors include suicidal tendencies and or self-mutilation. This program is generally activated when the victim survivor begins therapy or interrogation and too much memory is being recovered. That's right, and they will begin cutting. Gamma, the Gamma Monarch programming. Gamma rays. Another form of deliverance works. Prayer can get demons out of there and can bring a person who's not in their right mind back into their sound mind. Yes, prayer can do that. Another form of system protection is through deception programming. And, depending on how deep in the water that individual is, it may take more prayer. Like if you're out further in the deep water, it may take more swimming for us to get to you. But it's certainly doable. There's nothing our Father cannot do. Gamma, another form of system protection, is through deception programming, which elicits misinformation and misdirection. This level is intertwined with demonology and tends to regenerate itself at a later time if inappropriately deactivated. They go through a lot of changes, methods, and components. Trey Hoffley, excellent observation. Why is it all named after Greek frats? But these are letters, and the frats take their letters from the Greeks too. But if we say that everything that the Greeks did that was of any consequence or of any advancement, technologically or otherwise, we say that they had to get it from the Egyptians. They had to get it from the Egyptians. Well, the mind control template that Rome, by way of Greece, gave the world came directly from the Egyptian mystery systems. Period. The worst was first. All right, so let's read. Methods and components. Y'all ready? All right, let's go. Ready? Methods and components. The initial process begins with creating dissociation within the subject, usually occurring from the time of birth to about 6 years old. This is primarily achieved through the use of electroshock, ECT, and is at times performed even when the child is in the mother's womb. Due to the severe trauma induced through ECT, sexual abuse, and other methods, the mind splits off into alternate personalities from the core. Now think of how many times children have been traumatized while they were in their mother's womb because of the conditions of the society that we live in. So as I've said before, like witches and warlocks are now being created by default. The same thing I say happens for MKULTRA victims/survivors. You have many people that have never been taken anywhere and seen any doctor, anything, or had any implants placed inside of them. But because of their psychological conditioning, because of the narcissism pushed on them, because of the general vibration and mind state of the day, a young man can be so inclined to traumatize his unborn child while it's in its mother's womb by the things he's saying and doing, the way he's acting. So you don't have to get a handler to come and do this to everybody. When you get everybody so junky, wild, and devoid of love and common sense and they will do it to themselves. Let's continue. Okay. Formerly referred to as multiple personality disorder, it is presently recognized as dissociative identity disorder and is the basis for Monarch programming. Further conditioning of the victim's mind is enhanced through hypnotism, double bind coercion, pleasure pain reversals, Think of Ed Hardy and Pleasure is Pain, and people who name their albums that and get tattoos that say that. It's the double mind personified. It says, yeah, pleasure pain reversals. They will confuse you into thinking that something pleasurable is painful and something painful is pleasurable. Then you'll truly be unstable in all your ways. Food, water, sleep, and sensory deprivation, along with various drugs which alter certain cerebral functions. Okay. The next stage is to embed and compress detailed commands or messages within the specified altar. This is achieved through the use of high-tech headsets in conjunction with computer-driven generators, which emit inaudible sound waves or harmonics that affect the RNA covering of neuron pathways to the subconscious and conscious mind. Virtual reality optical devices are sometimes used simultaneously, with the harmonic generators projecting pulsating colored lights, subliminals, split-screen visuals. High-voltage electroshock is then used for memory dissolution. There's a question that bears answering. Is it the fault of the person if they are Jezebel and were programmed? Are they really evil? No, they are victims of something. Now, we don't fault, it's not about the fault, but there are ways that we make ourselves more vulnerable when we're not in line with the will of the Almighty. And when we're operating too much in our fleshly desires or our fleshly thoughts, though we may be good people, if asked, we may say, yeah, I believe there's a God. Okay, that's not enough. These spirits can jump on any average bare square out there. It's only one type of individual they can't just have their way with. That's an individual who is under the authority of the Messiah. Did I say that right? Jesus saved my life. Amen. Yes, when they get them young, it makes it more difficult. True. Raise up a child in the way they shall go. Don't tell you which way to raise them. It just tells you that however you raise them up, whatever philosophy you raise them with, they will stick to that script. So be careful, parents, that you are raising them up with, what we know to be true. And not just letting them do what the world says it's okay to do. So no, I would not say that she's an evil person because that spirit picked on her, found a weakness in her, and jumped inside of her vessel. Happens to Christian folk too. They don't like to admit it. So no, not at all. Okay, let's see. The next stage, excuse me. Okay. All right. Programming is updated periodically and reinforced through visual, auditory, and written mediums. Some of the first programming themes included The Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, both heavily saturated with occult symbolism. Many of the recent Disney movies and cartoons are used in a twofold manner: desensitizing the majority of the population, using subliminals and neuro-linguistic programming, and deliberately constructing specific triggers and keys for base programming of highly impressionable monarch children. Music plays an instrumental role. See, I don't like that there's something missing. It's paragraphs omitted. See, if I had have known. I wonder why it's paragraphs omitted. It says paragraphs omitted. Okay. I mean, this is a later publishing, so there was something taken out of this book. All right, paragraphs omitted. Music plays an instrumental role in programming through combinations of variable tones, rhythms, and words. Frightmeister Stephen King's numerous novels and subsequent movies are purported by credible sources to be used for such villainous purposes. So they say they even used Stephen King's novels. One of his latest books, Insomnia, features a picture of King with the trigger phrase, "We never sleep," indicative of someone with NPD or DID, below an all-seeing eye. It says, paragraphs omitted again. This says, recent informative mind control related movies. Total Recall, Brainstorm, Long Kiss Goodnight, Johnny Mnemonic, Conspiracy Theory, Mindfield, 12 Monkeys, Barbed Wire. Yes, you'll be surprised. In B movies, they always hide something deep. Fortress, Trancers 3, Jacob's Ladder, Videodrome, Circuitry Man, Lawnmower Man, Color of Night, Blade, Enemy of the State, Adventures of Baron von Munchausen, and Ninth Configuration. Older movies include Altered States, Stepford Wives, and the classic Manchurian Candidate. Many of those movies I have in the archives and have seen. And you can learn something from looking at these things once you have this background body of information and knowledge. All right, programmers and places. It's difficult to figure out who the original programmer of this satanic project was, due to the substantial amount of disinformation and cross-contamination propagated by the powers that be. The two that went by the color-coded name of Dr. Green are a Jewish doctor named Dr. Grunbaum, who supposedly collaborated with the Nazis during World War II, and Dr. Joseph Mengele, whose trademark of cold-blooded and calculating brutality has not only scarred the souls of survivors from Auschwitz, but also a countless number of victims throughout the world. Mengele's direct involvement at the infamous Auschwitz concentration camp was suspiciously downplayed during the Nuremberg trials, and consequently, no intensified effort by the U.S. and its allies was directed toward his capture. So they was kind of like, oh, well, hey, guys, that's Mengele. You want to arrest him? Oh, yeah, we got it. Yeah, we get around to it. We see him. We got him. We're watching him, guys. As a means to confuse serious investigators as to his whereabouts, U.S. officials would report Mengele being a non-threatening recluse in Paraguay or Brazil, or that he was simply dead. The angel of death miraculously must have come back to life at least 5 different times. His unprecedented research at the expense of thousands of lives undoubtedly was a significant bonus to U.S. interests. Besides using the pseudonym of Dr. Green, survivors knew him as Vatershon, Daddy, Shona Joseph, Beautiful Joseph, David, and Fairchild. A gracefully handsome man of slight stature, Mengele would disarm people with his gentle demeanor, while at other times he would explode into violent rages. Other characteristics remembered by survivors were the cadence of his shiny black boots as he paced back and forth, and his I love you not, daisy game Look at all these things that come from mind control. When he pulled off, excuse me, when he pulled off the last daisy petal, he would maliciously torture and kill a small child in front of the other child he was programming. Distraught survivors also recalled being thrown naked into cages with monkeys who were trained to viciously abuse them. Evidently, Mengele enjoyed reducing people to the level of animals. He also would purposely restrain his victims from crying, screaming, or showing any excessive emotion. Dr. D. Ewan Cameron, also known as Dr. White, was the former head of the Canadian, American, and World Psychiatric Associations. Because of Dr. Cameron's extensive experience and credentials, the CIA's Allen Dulles funneled millions of dollars through front organizations like the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, which Dr. Cameron ruthlessly presided over. Experimentations were conducted at several locations in Montreal, mostly at McGill University, St. Mary's Hospital, and Allen Memorial Institute. I have multiple reports in cases that involve a St. Mary's Hospital. I'm not lying. Okay. Besides the convention, and again, not the same St. Mary's, but it's just that may be perhaps the name that they all recognize as this is one of our MKULTRA complicit hospitals. All right, let's continue. Besides the conventional methods of psychiatric tyranny, such as electroshock, drug injections, and lobotomies, Cameron conceived the technique of psychic driving, wherein unsuspecting patients were kept in a drug-induced coma for several weeks and administered a regimen of electroshocks, while electronic helmets were strapped to their heads, and repetitive auditory messages were transmitted at variable speeds. Many of those exploited were abused children who had been run through the Roman Catholic orphanage system. Not surprising, Dr. Cameron has been conveniently left out of most psychiatric journals. This may have been, in fact, largely due to Project MKUltra being publicly exposed in 1970 through lawsuits filed by Canadian survivors and their families. So the lawsuits that they filed back in the 70s is what the Canadian victim survivor recently was paid by, or was paid through. This old lawsuit from the 70s. Have mercy. So that's how long they let them sit and suffer without closure. Okay. Okay. That's just like them. All right, let's continue. Okay. The CIA and Canadian governments settled out of court so as not to be required to officially admit to any wrongdoing. A former U.S. Army lieutenant colonel in the DIA's Psychological Warfare Division, Michael Aquino, is the latest in a line of alleged government-sponsored sadists. Aquino, an eccentric genius, founded the Temple of Set, an offshoot of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan. His obsession with Nazi pagan rituals and his hypnotic manipulation of people made him an ideal candidate for the position of master programmer. Aquino was connected with the Presidio Army Base daycare scandal, in which he was accused of child molestation. Much to the dismay of the young victim's parents, all charges were dismissed. Sentence omitted. See, I was trying to find an old version of this book. Okay. Heinrich Müller was another important programmer who went under the code names Dr. Blue or Gog. G-O-G. He apparently has 2 sons who have carried on the trade. The original Dr. Black was apparently Leo Wheeler, the nephew of deceased General Earl G. Wheeler, who was the commander of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during the Vietnam War. Wheeler's protege, E. Hummel, is active in the Northwest, along with W. Bowers from the Rothschild bloodline. Other alleged mastermind manipulators past and present are Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander, Richard Dabney Anderson, Dr. James Monroe, Dr. John Lilly, Lieutenant Commander Thomas Narut, Dr. William Jennings Bryan, Dr. Bernard L. Diamond, Dr. Martin T. Orne, Dr. Lewis J. West, Dr. Robert J. Lifton, Dr. Harris Isbell, and Colonel Wilson Green. In order to keep MKUltra from being easily detected, the CIA segmented its sub-projects into specialized fields of research and development at universities, prisons, private laboratories, and hospitals. Of course, they were rewarded generously with government grants and miscellaneous funding. The names and locations of some of the major institutions involved in Monarch programming experimentation were /R, Cornell, Duke, Princeton, UCLA, University of Rochester, MIT, Georgetown University Hospital, Maimonides Medical Center, St. Elizabeth's Hospital, Washington, D.C., Bell Balim, Bell Laboratories, Stanford Research Institute, Westinghouse Friendship Laboratories, General Electric, Arco, and Manking Research Unlimited. Manking Research Unlimited. M-A-N-K-I-N-G. One word. The final product is usually created on military installations and bases where maximum security is required, referred to as reprogramming or programming centers, or near-death trauma centers. The most heavily identified are China Lake Naval Weapons Center, the Presidio, Fort Detrick, Fort Campbell, Fort Lewis, Fort Hood, Redstone Arsenal, Offutt Air Force Base, Patrick Air Force Base, McClellan Air Force Base. The Air Force has a lot to do with it. McGill Air Force Base, Prince of the Power of the Kirkland Air Force Base, Nellis Air Force Base, Homestead, Grissom, Maxwell, and Tinker Air Force Bases. Other places recognized as major programming sites are Langley Research Center, Los Alamos National Laboratories, Tavistock Institute, and areas in or by Mount Shasta, California, Lampe, Missouri, and Las Vegas, Nevada. I wonder, is that the part of Missouri that Eminem came from, Lampe? Notable names. One of the first documented cases of a Monarch secret agent was that of the voluptuous 1940s model Candy Jones. The book, The Control of Candy Jones, from Playboy Press, portrays her 12 years of intrigue and suspense as a spy for the CIA. Playboy model, or voluptuous 1940s model, Candy Jones, yes. Spent 12 years as a spy for the CIA. Jones, whose birth name is Jessica Wilcox, apparently fit the physiological profile as to be one of the initial experiments or human guinea pigs under the government's scientific project MKUltra. The most publicized case of Monarch monomania has surfaced through the book Transformation of America. That's on the way. The True Life Story of a CIA Slave by Cathy O'Brien. That book I had back in the day. On the back cover, it emphatically states that book was mind-blowing. Check it out. It says, it emphatically states Cathy O'Brien is the only vocal and recovered survivor of the Central Intelligence Agency's MKULTRA Project Monarch mind control operation. This documented autobiography contains compelling accounts of O'Brien's years of unrelenting incest and eventual introduction into Project Monarch by her perverted father. That'll tell you how the parents put the children in, just like Janice's mama put her in. Now I'm thinking back to Cathy O'Brien's story about how her dad was so low down, but her dad put her in. Okay, so we'll be looking at that one too as we go through this refresher course. So we're going to deal with MKUltra. We're going to go back over all the pertinent and necessary information to make sure we all have a firm foundation. Then we're going to walk together to help lead folks toward our Father and His salvation through our Messiah, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ the Messiah. All right. Okay, it says, along with co-author Mark Phillips, her rescuer and deprogrammer, right? Cathy covers an almost unbelievable array of conspiratorial crime, forced prostitution, white slavery, with those in the upper echelons of world politics. For some reason, I don't think you should say white slavery, because I think we understand that. But it's almost like as if, unless you put white in front of it, of course we mean black slavery or non-white slavery, right? Of course we don't mean white slavery. So it's like you have to put it there. It's like, okay, slavery is bad, period. Okay, forced prostitution, slavery. With those, I understand the term and the meaning for the term, but it's just like, I mean, you wouldn't put black slavery there. But anyway, forced prostitution, white slavery, with those in the upper echelons of world politics, covert assignments as a drug mule and courier, and the country western music industry's relationship with illegal CIA activities. That is all through Transformation of America. I forgot she's going to deal a lot with the music business in there. Okay? All right. Paul Bonacci, a courageous survivor who endured almost 2 decades of degradation under Project Monarch, has disclosed, now he's in, Paul Bonacci is, we're going to bump into more about him as we go through the Franklin cover-up book. Paul Bonacci is a big part of that story. But anyway, I'm sure that's what they're going to say. Paul Bonacci, a courageous survivor who endured almost 2 decades of degradation under Project Monarch, has disclosed strong corroborating evidence of wide-scale crimes and corruption from the municipal state level all the way up to the White House. He has testified about sexually abused males selected from Boys Town in Nebraska and taken to nearby Offutt Air Force Base, where he says they were subjected to intense Monarch programming, directed mainly by Commander Bill Plemons and former Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino. After thoroughly tormenting the young boys into mindless oblivion, they were used, along with girls, for pornography and prostitution with several of the nation's political and economic power brokers. Bonacci recalled being transported from the Air Force Base by way of cargo planes to McClellan Air Force Base in California. Along with other unfortunate adolescents and teenagers, he was driven to the elite retreat Bohemian Grove. The perpetrators took full advantage of those innocent victims, committing unthinkable perversions in order to satisfy their deviant lusts. Some victims were apparently murdered further traumatizing already terrified and broken children. The following information is provided by Bryce Taylor at the time of this writing in 1999. Yuri Dalbinko wrote an article for Media Bypass Magazine. Wrote an article for Media Bypass Magazine, June 1999. They gotta laugh to keep from crying. Where he reports that justice was finally served when a U.S. District Court recently awarded a $1 million settlement to Bonacci after years of legal aid from his attorney, John DeCamp. John DeCamp is who wrote the Franklin cover-up book. Bonacci's attorney. Right, okay. I couldn't think of the connection. All right. An insatiable actress of marginal talent, now deceased, a morally corrupt TV evangelist, a heralded former Green Beret officer, and a popular country western singer are a few others likely having succumbed to monarch madness. Lee Harvey Oswald, Sirhan, Charlie Manson, John Hinckley Jr., Mark Chapman, David Koresh, Tim McVeigh, and John Salvi are some notable names of infamy, strongly suspected of being pawns who were spawned by MKULTRA. Just a little bit more and then we'll be leaving out the door. Literally, we're on the last page. Thank you. Thank y'all. Okay, sorry about that. Okay. All right. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so this is literally the very last page, and I think this is the last page of the prologue or whatever, and then we actually get into the book. Actually, there's another preview section after this, but again, it's thorough. We need it. We need the next preview section. The next preview section is preview by therapists working with mind control victims. So we will read that next before we get into the juicy parts. I know some of y'all just want to hear about Bryce dealing with the entertainers, which she did. She said Bob Hope was her handler. And I think she's the one that actually said something about the Jackson 5 having to endure molestation right before they went out on the Ed Sullivan show, I believe it was. So I believe that's going to be in Bryce's book here. But let's deal with this last page. All right. Deprogrammers and exposers. I'm going to leave this part out. But anyway, Dr. Corydon Hammond, a psychologist from the University of Utah, delivered a stunning lecture entitled Hypnosis in MPD, Ritual Abuse, at the 4th Annual Eastern Regional Conference on Abuse and Multiple Personality on June 25, 1992, in Alexandria, Virginia, of all places. He essentially confirmed the suspicions of the attentive crowd of mental health professionals, wherein a certain percentage of their clients had undergone mind control programming in an intensively systematic manner. Hammond alluded to the Nazi connection, military and CIA mind control research, Greek letter and color programming, which is, yes, excellent observation, which is also essential to the frats and the sororities, who will then end up becoming the authorities once they get their degrees, and then they're sent out into the nation, put into positions of power and influence as the professionals, those whose word is considered more credible. Let's continue. Okay. Yeah, Greek letter and color programming, and specifically mentioned the Monarch project in relation to a form of operant conditioning. Shortly after his groundbreaking speech, he received death threats. Not wanting to jeopardize the safety of his family, Dr. Hammond stopped disseminating any follow-up information until recently. Paragraph omitted. New Orleans therapist Valerie Wolf introduced 2 of her patients before the President's Committee on Human Radiation Experiments on March 15, 1995 in Washington, D.C. The astonishing testimony made by these 2 brave women included accounts of German doctors, torture, drugs, electroshock, hypnosis, and rape, besides being exposed to an undetermined amount of radiation. Both Wolf and her patients stated they recovered the memories of this abuse without regression or hypnosis techniques. Wolf presently devotes much of her time to counseling such survivors. A former labor attorney for Atlantic Richfield Company, David E. Rosenbaum, conducted a 9-year investigation from 1983 to 1992 concerning allegations of physical torture and coercive conditioning of numerous employees at an ARCO plant, ARCO, at an ARCO plant in Monarch, Pennsylvania. His clients, Jerry L. Doty and Ann White, were victims of apparent radiation exposure. But as Mr. Rosenbaum probed deeper in the subsequent interview sessions, a Pandora's box was unveiled. His most astonishing conclusion was that Jerry Doty and Ann White were likely the offspring of Adolf Hitler, based in part on the uncanny resemblance from photos, facial features, bone structure, and size were taken into consideration. Rosenbaum also states they both exhibit feelings and experiences that indicate they are twins. Doty and White were allegedly subjected to torture of many kinds while under drug-induced hypnosis, with each one undergoing at least 3 training techniques by plant physicians. Each victim was trained to enter into a hypnotic state. Each victim was trained to enter into a hypnotic state upon the occurrence of specific stimuli, usually involving a cue, word, or phrase, and trained to remember to forget. Trained to remember to forget what transpired. Trained to remember to forget what transpired in the hypnotic state. They were repeatedly subjected to identical stimulus response sequences to produce nearly automatic reactions to the particular status. MKULTRA veterans Dr. Bernard Diamond, Dr. Martin Orn, and Dr. Joseph Mengele regularly visited the ARCO plant, according to Rosenbaum. The special conditioning of Doty and White was intended for the artificial creation of dual German personalities. Rosenbaum, who is Jewish, has maintained a deep friendship with the 2, despite the seemingly precarious circumstances. Other renowned therapists involved in deprogramming are Cynthia Byrtus, Pamela Monday, Steve Ogilvy, Bennett Braun, Jerry Mungads, and Colin Ross. Some Christian counselors have been able to eliminate parts of the programming with limited success. Interesting. As of the date of this writing, journalists who have recently expounded on the subject matter in exemplary fashion are Walter Bowart, Operation Mind Control, John Rappaport, U.S. Government Mind Control Experiments on Children, and Alex Constantine, Psychic Dictatorship in the USA and Virtual Government, plus author researchers Alan Shefflin and Edward Opton Jr., The Mind Manipulators, Harvey Weinstein, MD, Psychiatry and the CIA, Victims of Mind Control, and Jim Keith, Mind Control, World Control, and his latest book, Mass Control, Engineering Human Consciousness. Conclusion. The most incriminating statement to date made by a government official as to the possible existence of Project Monarch was extracted by Anton Chaikin, a writer for the publication The New Federalist. When former CIA Director William Colby was asked directly, "What about Monarch?" he replied angrily and ambiguously, "We stopped that between the late 1960s and the early 1970s. Suffice to say that society, in its apparent state of cognitive dissonance, is generally in denial of the overwhelming evidence of this multifarious conspiracy. Numerous victims victims/survivors of Project Monarch, are in desperate need of help. However, the great majority of people are too preoccupied with themselves to show any genuine compassion toward these severely wounded individuals. Apathy has taken over the minds of the masses, who choose to exist within the comforts of this world. Reality has thus become obscured by relativism and selfishness. Although there has been some progress in deprogramming and reintegrating therapies, a much greater problem needs to be rectified. The Holy Bible addresses this problem as the fragmentation of the soul, Ezekiel 13:20. Psalm 23 says, "He restores your soul. He will restore it." A spiritual restoration is what is truly needed. See, if I just wait. Psalm 23:3. Sentence omitted. Paragraph omitted in the last sentence. Statistically, the road to recovery for these survivors of unimaginable depravity is a long and tedious one. But God is the ultimate healer, and only within His time, through His strength, and by His grace, can the captives be set free. Isaiah 61:1. And it's 3 EST. That's enough for me. Yes, he does. Yes, Sister Vanette, the emissions are disturbing. Yes, indeed. So now, what I invite you to do, like you should do every time you're introduced to something new, is take it to the Father and ask Him what He wants you to do. Some of you will be willing to stand with us in prayer against these things when we do so. But I want you to be well aware of what you're dealing with. And you need to do some more research on your own. But we're going to make sure that we all have a certain working body of knowledge. A certain body of knowledge that we can work from concerning these things. And of course, we have nothing to fear because we're not doing anything but asking here. Our Father does the heavy lifting. You know, no superhero complexes will be found here. Okay? So, that's the reason for the reading. And so we will carry on and read some more on our next meeting, either next Wednesday or before that. Saturday, you can look forward to us picking back up where we left off in the After the Dance book. Oh, I'm sorry, Elia McKee. Yes, let me read some of these things here. I'm so sorry. Let me read some of your comments. I was just reading and ready to go. I'm sorry. Okay, and for anyone for whom it wasn't made clear, the book that I was reading was this book here. It is called Thanks for the Memories. It's by Bryce Taylor, and it is the memoirs of Bob Hope's and Henry Kissinger's mind-controlled slave, used as a presidential sex slave and personal computer. Now, interestingly enough, like I say about Cathy O'Brien and her rescuer slash husband now, Mark Phillips. Well, Bryce Taylor was linked up with Ted Gunderson. And I note nowadays, again, things are different. Nowadays, people are saying Ted Gunderson was a shill or a plant. And I don't know that. But I would tell you that that would be kind of odd. Because before y'all had YouTube and Google to look up people and see whether or not it's an exposed video on them, he was one of the first people breaking that information about Satanism and the children and the rituals, and he was not being very well received. So I believe that he was at one time, like we always find, he was at one time, a sincere crusader, social justice warrior, whatever you want to call it, a real revolutionary. And I believe that, they wore him down. He got, he was old. He may have feared not for his own life, maybe for the lives of his grandbabies. Who knows? So, I just wanted to say that concerning old Ted Gunderson, because I learned a lot from Ted Gunderson when you had to buy a book or go to a lecture to learn any of this type of stuff. He's one of the early people. When I talk about people I learned stuff from early, I've said his name before. So again, I don't know where he is today or what, as far as what tip he's on or what where he was coming from last. I don't know. I'm not worried about that. But I can tell you that the Lord certainly used him to help bring this information to people. And so we'll see what role he played in the life of Bryce Taylor as we read this book. The victims, the ring of truth that comes from the survivors, Bryce Taylor, Cathy O'Brien. It's a way that if you've heard enough people tell stories, lies, and true stories, it's a way that the truth, there's a vibration of truth. Something that has a ring of truth. Bryce is telling the truth. Cathy is telling the truth. Now, when Mark Phillips is talking, I don't know. When Ted Gunderson is talking in the old ones, he was telling the truth. In some later ones, I don't know. I hadn't, wasn't checking for that. So, but that's not as important as that we receive their story, that we understand how their story relates to probably millions of other people who are experiencing similar things. And we have to think of how few in the church know about it. But even out of those who, let's say we could teach some pastors about this, most of them wouldn't want to deal with it. They may have brotherhood ties and they don't want to rock that boat. And even those that don't have brotherhood ties, most people are scared to death of spiritual warfare and mind control, even that much more so. So, which is one reason why, too, I stopped talking about and praying about those things on video. I wasn't trying to bring people into my world because, it's not something that's easy to get used to. I do it because I'm used to it. And that's by the Father's will. But, to whom much is given, much is required. I would be irresponsible to just say, all right, y'all, come on, let's go pray against the devils and let's go against the mind controllers. There are folks who are built to do that, and there are folks that are not. So, you have to, you determine what type of person you are. And if you're willing to fight the good fight on the highest levels, I'd be glad to fight alongside you. Okay? So, I think that's it. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm just reading some of y'all stuff. Yeah, interesting things here. Ted Gunderson has passed on. Yeah, thought so. Micah Matina says, yes, brother, unplug them. Teachings in your blood. Your sub list will skyrocket fast. You are anointed in the blood of Christ, and nothing is stopping you now. Teach. All praise is due to the true and living God, and I appreciate the recognition. I just ask that He keeps me going. Okay. And there is Sister Kim, Sister K in the place to stay. I didn't see you. I hadn't been looking down here. I hadn't seen much of anybody. I don't know who's in here. So, again, if I missed anyone, oh, thank you, Micah Martina. Ted Gunderson was murdered. Thank you. Okay. If I missed anyone, again, please charge it to this big head and not my heart. So, I thank you. Chris Von Doom, waiting for more knowledge, I am. Well, right now I have to retire to Dagobah and wait for Luke Skywalker. So, I do thank all of y'all who... all right, Brother Chris. Yeah, I do thank all of y'all who did endure with us for prayer and then came back in here for reading. I appreciate y'all. I appreciate folks that's built to last, because that's what the church is sorely needing. So, with that being said, I'm not going to keep anybody, any longer. And I just want to touch and agree with all of you and just simply ask, in the authority of the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and the power of His name, that our Father would please bind to you Proverbs 4 and 8 and Psalm 4 and 8 and Proverbs 3 and 24, sweet sleep. And please bind to that sweet sleep, sweet dreams right behind. And please also bind the comfort of the Comforter, the Holy Spirit, to comfort us all, mind, body, and soul, throughout the night season. And let us wake up refreshed and rejuvenated, well rested in the morning. In Jesus' name. Father, we ask those things, Heavenly Father, only according to your word and your will. Matthew 7 and 7, Isaiah 55 and 11, Numbers 23 and 19 still. We touch and we agree, and we call it done in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, the Son. Amen and amen. Good night. Good night, y'all. Peace. Peace and good night to you. LaPup, Sister Julie, Sister Christy, Brother Sam. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Big Nephew Samuel Gonzalez. This would definitely be up. Usually takes about an hour. Or maybe within the hour. It ain't gonna take no whole hour. Might be about 15 minutes from now. It'll be up on YouTube. So I'm so glad that you came. Amen. Witches get ditches. We forever bang. It's always on site, all the time, all my life. We gonna bang till I'm gone. Love you, Sister Kim. Peace and blessings. Jonathan G says phone number and the last four numbers were 1566. She sounded like a witch. Do you think that was just a coincidence? Test the spirit by the spirit. And the coincidence being coincidence. So it could coincide. The fact that she sounded like one to you, and the fact that her number ended technically in 3 6s, and the fact that something told you that, or something that you felt about her made you think about witches. Perhaps. Maybe there's something to that. But we don't want to put that misjudgment on anyone. That would be a terrible thing to do. So the best thing that can be done is to ask for our Father to lead you by the Holy Spirit. Jeremiah 33 and 3, He will lead you and He will let it be known. He will reveal it to you either way. That I can guarantee. Kai Brown. And I love you, Brother Jonathan. God bless you. Love you, Brother Kai. I don't know if Kai Brown is a brother. No, I love you, Sister Christy, Maria, Big Nephew Samuel. Love you. Tanya, I love you. Carpe JKDM. Peace and blessings to you. I love you. Yep, you should listen to your instincts. Most of the time they'll tell you right. Love you, Sister Vanette. Peace and blessings to you. Yeah, T-Dot. Yeah, I wondered a little bit with the Motown music playing in the background. I don't know, but you know, we usually have to say what up though to each other to identify ourselves. You know, it's the Detroit connection greeting. So I didn't receive a what up though when we corresponded. So I don't think he is from here. So you're the only one who ever said my name right. Oh, right on. It kind of sounds familiar, as a matter of fact. All right, everybody. Kega Khan, bless you. Micah Matina says her mom is in Detroit. Brandon Young says, right on, I live near Detroit. Christy Joyce says, I can't hear anything. Well, I guess that's my cue. And Brother Reuben, I'm sorry that you did fall asleep when you did, but that's okay. The videos are going to be right back up on YouTube for display. Folks will be able to watch these videos at any time throughout the day. And so give it about 10 or 15 minutes after we sign off here, which we're about to do, and then you can watch it too. But we're going to go ahead and get up out of here. We talked about mind control. We looked through the book, Bryce Taylor's Thanks for the Memories, which is an essential must read when you're dealing with mind control. And so I'm blessed to be able to share it with all of y'all, and we're going to use it in battle the best way we can. Please believe that. We're going to always make our next move our best move. Okay? We're moving with the Father. It's the blessed move. So I love you. We out. All right. Peace. Peace to each. Much love to you, Kega Kong, Brandon Young, and all the rest of you. I'll see y'all sooner rather than later. All right? Shalom. Good night. Good night, Sister Lane.